Executive Board at Europe's leading software company SAP. And he will speak with us about how to create meaning in the digital area. Let us welcome Mr. Stefan Ries.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning. Besides your, I think, great introduction, I've learned two things. First of all, important task for a leader. I have delegated the slide clicker. Because then I can talk a little bit in the Italian style, and this is important for leadership, obviously. And I'm sure she will do it much better than I can do it, and will find the right position. And the second thing is, when you spoke about the purpose, when you spoke about the vision, the common thing, not on the expense of individuals, I was really thinking about what we discussed before we started the day today about my experience last night. When unfortunately, again, my soccer team, my favorite soccer team lost, and I'm probably thinking about that. Maybe you need to spend a little bit more time with Bayern Munich to explain to them why the offense line needs to talk to the defense line, so that we avoid that kind of situation again in the future. You have the big advantage, you're sitting in the same location, in the same town, so I hope you're going to offer that service soon. All right, good. Well, meaning of work, and when we talked about this as a preparation for the discussion today, of course, there were hundreds of ideas, and when we had the discussion up front with the timekeeper, she said, I'm going to pressure you to time, and then if it's 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and I said, well, I don't care, I have a story to tell, so let's see. The good news is my slide clicker expert, she's going to drive me in terms of my timekeeping experiences also tied to the agenda. What I brought to you is also, in addition to what Martin said, some additional food for thought. Food for thought, how we learn and how we live our purpose at SAP, because I think this is not only something which we love to show on slides or in a cool video like this, but it's important for us to live day by day. And how can you make sure that an organization who is driven by financials, unfortunately by a lot of analysts and by quarterly thinking and processes, how can you make sure that an organization has a purpose? And that's what I'm talking about. Now you see, and you saw in the invitation a lot of facts, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but just to get us up to speed, and you said that already, Martin, that there are a lot of people out there working in organizations who unfortunately are not engaged, which is a huge problem. So what are you going to do in an organization of almost 85,000 people around the world, with 7,500 leaders and managers around the world? How are you going to create a common understanding, a common vision, a common strategy, and then at the end, as you have said so nicely, is how do you execute that strategy? Because there's one thing to create a nice PowerPoint, but how are you going to live it? How are you going to make sure that when you want to attract new people to your organization, that they see the people, the leaders, the manager, the executive team really lives that behavior, which is the sum, hopefully then, and when we create our culture. In correspondence to your discussion, what we have done is we spent many years talking about what is our values and what is our visionary system and how we work together. We went one line further down, and we are using now these days behavior, which I think is very important. And what I want to share with you right now is a little bit to talk about opportunities and challenges in a world where we know we are going really big and fast with massive data, with lots of electronic gadgets out there, and on top, with many generations in the workforce right now. Believe it or not, even in our company, when you would say SAP is at the forefront of the digitalization, we have 5 generations in our workforce. 5. Now, When I'm in Asia, the people look at me and say, well, 3 others, because they really are just very, very young. But if you go into our mature markets, of course, and Germany, for example, is one, or France, or the UK, you see 5 generations in our workforce, and their motivation is substantially different. They have a couple of things which are in common. Money. They have also other things in common, which is really interesting, that even the digital natives, the youngest generation, say leadership matters. It's not all in the virtual setup. I love to have an engagement with my direct manager face-to-face. But when you listen very carefully to the youngest generation, they tell you loud and clear, louder than any other generation before, it's the purpose which really matters. What is my personal impact in my job? What can I do to improve not only the company performance, what can I do to improve people's life? And that's the big difference. And that's a huge investment from our perspective to make sure that that kind of mental model is kept and lived on a day-by-day basis. So, we have, as you have said, of course a clear vision, which you can see here. And of course our purpose is to improve people's life. Now, go with me 10 years back in our economy, in our industry. And there you're going to see, and you will find out that it was very, very hard to create a purpose. Because when I had to explain to a room like that of people who wanted to engage and work with us or be part of the SAP family, then you had to explain, well, we are doing software in a business-to-business environment, we're doing software for accounting, we're doing software for human resources, we are doing software for supply chain logistics. Not very tangible. Sometimes very abstract. And not easy to explain what's the purpose of the software. These days, it's different, because we can really explain what software can do differently to improve people's life. And this is why we know and why we see that there is a huge opportunity for us to keep it together, what the younger generation asks for, the purpose of their roles and responsibilities and their jobs, connected to the company's vision, business and strategy. And here I want to, and I don't have that in the slides, but I think this is important to talk about. When you, Martin, spoke about life, when you talk about work, I still have huge problems to understand why we are so often talking about a so-called work-life balance. Work is part of my life. Why do we talk about work-life balance? I mean, for me, my work is part of my life. And I want to make sure that this is something where I have a very positive experience, because I'm spending a hell of a lot of time in the business, in the office, with customers, with prospects, with potential candidates who want to join SAP. So the concept of work-life balance is something which is not very useful. In fact, it's contrary to what we have in mind when we talk about the business purpose, when we talk about how can we engage our 85,000 men and women within SAP for a higher purpose. So, what I brought for the discussion and as additional food for thought is, when you heard me talking about 5-10 years ago, why it was so difficult to translate our purpose with our products, with our solutions into something meaningful, I want to share with you a few examples. And I'm going to start with one example, which is probably not so visible out there. As you know, and you see that all over, we are all talking about big data. We are talking about Internet of Things. We are talking about everything is connected. And what we have done is, with our technology, with our in-memory database systems, we were able to connect all cancer healing institutes around the world on one database. Now you need to imagine that when you think about patients' data and cancer healing information, that's millions, it's trillions of data sets which you're going to compare, which you're going to have available. But in the old days, basically somebody at the university hospital in Tokyo, when he had to look for a specific medication for patients, then what has he or she done? They looked into their files, maybe they had some additional research information available in Japan, but they never had the opportunity to exchange that information across the world. That's what they're doing now in real time. In real time. And this is something, when I speak to millennials, when I have the opportunity to talk to people of the youngest generation, then they understand, okay, hey, these guys are not just doing software for bookkeeping or for supply chain or logistics. They really try to help the world run better with their software. And that's the connection. And this is where, when we on an annual basis measure our employee engagement, this is when we ask the people, how do you see the connection between our strategy and what we do on a day-by-day basis within your working environment? And that's why I believe this is so important to talk about the value and also the purpose of work. The second example, skills and competences. These days, just alone within SAP, we have roughly about 1.2, 1.3 million online courses available. That's magic. That's dreamland 5 or 10 years ago, with massive online open courses, with opportunities that people can learn wherever they are, on mobile devices, while they are traveling. This is something which we never had the technical capability in the past. And when I now translate that into countries where they have not so much development opportunities from the past in terms of infrastructure, think about Africa, which I spoke about that one a little bit, these guys all have mobile devices. So you can offer learning opportunities through mobile devices, which was 5 years ago just simply impossible because we couldn't handle the data. So that's another good example from our perspective, how we can connect the purpose of what we're doing from the business also with the purpose of life. Last but not least, probably an example where you would say, oh well, that comes closer to what you have said before in terms of SAP is known as a business-to-business software manufacturer. And of course, we have lots of experience. How can we improve the logistics on services or on goods or on food? And that's what we're doing. And this is when you think about, again, this massive big data environment of a logistic or a supply chain organization, whether it's going to be somebody who's doing that on a voluntary basis or who has created that as a business. This is just an enormous opportunity for us really to move into something which creates purpose for life. Last example, and that touches the one we discussed before. Of course, we are also proud to offer services and solutions. When you think about now 2 years back, when we had the World Championship in Brazil, the German team was equipped with SAP software to analyze all the data from all the teams who were on. And of course, when we were beaten, I hope nobody's there from Brazil. So this was you. Yeah. Of course, we are proud, and I can use this as a great example of saying all the players used our software when they analyzed the other teams in order to understand how they need to move, what is the tactic, how can they improve their behavior on the ground in order to make sure that we are successful. So when you think about those examples, and when you think about how can we do it also a little bit more closer to ourselves, then I want to share with you 3 examples. The day before last, I was in Berlin. In Berlin, we support since many, many years a lab which is called the Social Impact Lab. The Social Impact Lab is a startup environment where companies like ours sponsor financially and give startups the chance, who are non-profit organization, to help improving individual situations or collectively situations which we are facing. One of which is, of course, the refugee crisis within Germany. So I spend time with them, and then you see and feel the impact. We can help and we can provide to our society. Guess what? A lot of employees within SAP, they're knocking at the door and saying, can I be a sponsor of it? Can I help those organizations? Besides my job, they are spending hundreds of hours on a voluntary basis to help those organizations. And I think this is such an amazing experience, because when I was in Berlin, I visited one, and they just opened a catering service or a cafe, also with refugees coming from Africa, because they have no education at all. And we are helping them to slowly integrate into our society, which we benefit as an organization big time. As I'm already getting the sign, we need to come to the end. Let me also point out two other examples which I think are very important. And we have representatives in your team available, and I'm sure they will talk to you and are available to talk to you later on this one. On an annual basis, we foster very strongly initiatives which are connected to innovation. And one of which is called the so-called Hasso-Plattner Founder Award, because he's the founder of our company. And you see hundreds of teams really hungry, working on new ideas, how we can increase not just the business performance, but really how can we improve people's lives with technology solutions from SAP. And I think this is something during the day you will have for sure the opportunity to talk a little bit about that with our participants. And the second one is, I think, an amazing experience for leaders as well as for top talents we offer since a few years, when we ask them to do a so-called social sabbatical, and they go to Africa, they go to South America, helping organizations, helping people there to get their business started or improving their businesses. And I can tell you from a leadership experience, when these people come back, that's the best training I can offer to anybody. Forget all the classroom training, forget all the theoretical leadership courses at any global setup. Those kind of experiences, when they are there 6 weeks, 2 months, and come back with that experience, this is the real game changer. And that helps us, obviously, to create purpose of life. Finally, running out of time. This is something I want to spend really 45 seconds on it. Leadership in the traditional way is something where we need to say goodbye to. Nobody is looking to a leader as a hierarchical layer within the organization anymore. Everybody looks into a leader that he or she needs a coach. And a coach is much more than just making sure you have your goals and your performance reviews in place. A coach is somebody who is even probably from time to time pushing you out of your comfort zone. And this is why leadership in the environment of creating meaning or purpose, as we call it within SAP, is so important. And you've heard me saying that when I speak about 7,500 leaders, guess what? That takes time to make sure that these people follow our idea and follow our strategy. And that's part of my role. And that's part of my role, but it's also part of our CEO's role. That's the part of the CFO's role, to make sure that we represent an environment where we not just have something in place where we believe that makes a difference for the existing generation, but also for the generations in the future. Now, having that in mind, we are changing a lot of things. We are changing these days, for example, our whole performance management system, where we classically came from an environment, you set goals, you rate them, you give them KPIs, and then you get a result. We are, for example, skipping ratings these days, because that's not meaningful for us. Why do you rate people? We don't need rating in order to identify talents. We are focusing much more time now on how can we develop talents within the organization. And finally, and this is something where I want to share at the end also a short video on it, because I think that nicely combines digitalization with technology and purpose. We have now solutions in place where you can overcome basic selection criteria even out of human beings' behaviors, such as when you usually, as an human and as an HR person or a recruiter, when you analyze CVs, what are you going to look at first? From somebody who comes from my university, guess what? I'm not going to send that person out of the door immediately. I just love it because he or she came from the same environment. But that's a bias. I'm closing down certain talent pools, which I think is not the right thing if we want to create an environment of a very rich, diverse workforce. And therefore we have launched a new initiative which is called Business Beyond Bias, which pays in the meaning of work big time, because at the same time, while we are saying we need to recognize the difference, we also need to make sure that we have a bias in ourselves. We exclude certain talents which create a lot of problems for organizations like ours. So let's have a look into this video. And then I'm a little bit over time, but almost ready. Thank you.